Hello and welcome to the Spirit Spa, an online sanctuary dedicated to supporting you if you're in the early stages of recovery from a nervous breakdown. I'm Karen Packwood, an author and spiritual guide. And in today's message from the wilderness, I'm going to be focusing on the theme of, is it normal to feel overwhelmed during the early stages of recovery? I'd like to begin by giving you my definition of overwhelm. Overwhelm is where we feel as if we have had a wave of complete terror and anxiety engulfing our entire system, triggering off physical, emotional, and psychological reactions. Often, this can just sometimes it can just be kind of like a tiny little bit of anxiety, but actually at the other end of the spectrum, it can be kind of like lead to a full-blown panic attack. Is this normal during the early stages of recovery? Yes, it is. And actually, I think it's quite normal beyond the early stages of recovery. I think that it's quite normal throughout your entire journey of recovery that you are going to be triggered into moments of overwhelm. And if I'm completely honest, reflecting on my own journey, I think that it's actually still possible that, several years along the journey of recovery, there are still going to be times when you fall into a sense of overwhelm. But you learn to deal with it and you learn how to work with it. But in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just talk about when you are finding yourselves in that place of overwhelm right at the early stages, because, it can be that right in the early days, even the tiniest of activities or experiences can trigger us into extreme overwhelm, extreme anxiety, extreme terror, and extreme panic attacks. I'm going to give you an example of something from my own life, and I'll talk about it in terms of my own life. But I'm sure that you will have your own personal experiences of this. For me personally, it was around opening envelopes. This was one example. There were several examples, but there was one example, and this was around opening envelopes. But for you, it might be things like replying to texts from your friends. It could be around opening emails, responding to emails. It could be, simple activities like going to do the daily shopping. Things that we take for granted as normal, everyday, easy activities before our breakdown can feel like the most terrifying of experiences during the early stages of recovery. Why is this? Well, I think that it all comes down to trust. When we have experienced a shattering nervous breakdown, it is so traumatic that we lose a lot of trust in the world. Our sense of safety has been completely upturned, confused. We don't know what is safe anymore. We don't know what is not safe because, we were going along in our lives thinking that everything was okay when suddenly it wasn't. So how do we know that anything that we're about to embark on now is safe? So that I think that there's that massive, we've lost trust in the safety of life, in the safety of the world. And then alongside that, we've also lost a sense of trust in ourselves. If we, our thinking is something along the lines of, if we manage to get ourselves into this predicament of having a nervous breakdown, who are we to trust ourselves? Who are we to be able to believe that we're capable of functioning normally and well in everyday life? Now, I think there's much more to it, but I'm just going to focus on those two aspects within this video. Little example from my own experience then is this. As some of you know from things that I've shared in other emails, other videos, in the early stages of recovery for me, because I wasn't able to work, I then ended up in a very difficult situation financially, which then meant that I ended up in an awful lot of debt. So alongside having to try and deal with the emotional and psychological and physical recovery of my nervous breakdown, I had a whole kind of, real life stuff going on around finances as well, which was very overwhelming. extremely terrifying, would trigger me into extreme panic, and also actually would trigger me into hysterical kind of screaming fits as well. And I just wasn't able to cope with it at all. So, so if letters came from the bank, if letters, any kind of letters that would come through the door, I was not able to open them. So I would do the whole kind of, stacking them up on the side and just kind of completely ignoring them. The overwhelm was so debilitating because, of course, each time something came through the door that I couldn't open, it would kind of reinforce my shame, within myself. I was a competent, functioning human being beforehand. Now I can't even open an envelope. I felt so ashamed of myself, which then just kind of compounded all the other terrible feelings I already felt about myself, because I'd kind of, been weak enough to have a nervous breakdown. That's how I perceived it at the time. What did I do with this? Well, for a very, very long time, I didn't do anything. I just completely the overwhelm was so overwhelming that I was unable to do anything. But time moved on, and eventually I came to a point where I was able to recognize that I was in overwhelm, but that I was not helping myself by ignoring the envelopes. And for you, it might be a completely different issue, but for me, it was the envelopes. So one of the things that I did was I actually began to tell people. I began to let people know, I can't cope with this. I can't cope when envelopes come through the door. Would you open the envelopes for me? Would you read the contents? Would you work out whether it's an okay thing for me to read, where I'm not going to be triggered into complete hysteria or overwhelming terror or panicking, or is it something that I need to deal with? And if it's something that I need to deal with and it's too much for me to deal with it, please will you help me deal with it? So I had to reach out and ask for help. It didn't feel great to do that. I felt very pathetic for doing that, but it was something that I knew I had to do in order to help me move forward. And eventually things got a little bit better, and I'm happy to report that all these years later, it's about 12 years now since I had my breakdown, but it's taken me a very long time. I actually now can open envelopes. I still have triggers of trauma and panic and anxiety that wafts around in my body and in my head, but I'm now able to take the envelopes and I'm now able to open them and actually deal with the contents, and that's a huge step forward for me. And I'm sharing that because I want to encourage you to believe that the tasks that you're finding overwhelming, you will be able to overcome at some point. I do strongly recommend that you ask somebody to help you and be very honest with people. I'm working with somebody to create a new website for me at the moment. Technology is definitely something that triggers me into overwhelm. So I've been very honest with my web designer right from the word go. And she has been absolutely fantastic at just kind of giving me information and working with me in ways that really honour and supports my sense of overwhelm rather than shaming me with it. So it's very important that you make sure that you're communicating with people who are not going to shame you, and certainly do not shame yourself, which is easier said than done, because I'm very good at shaming myself. If there are things that I can't do that I feel I should be able to do. So that's so be very honest with people, and by being honest with people, you're being honest with yourself, and that's actually quite empowering to actually come to a place of just owning it. I absolutely own and accept that I have this sense of overwhelm around this particular issue. Now, there's another thing that you can do. Now, this is a technique that I use with clients when I work with them on several issues, actually. But this is a technique that I call it the sacred circle technique. And I'm just going to take you into a part of the forest that I use when I work with clients in person. And this is a part of the forest where there is a very beautiful sacred circle. Now, this is a circle. I'm going to just show it to you. This is a circle that is being created in the forest out of all of the fallen branches from the leaves during the winds and the storms. Now, I'm not suggesting that you're going to be making yourself a sacred circle like this. There's actually ways of doing this in the privacy of your own home, very simply. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to invite you to create a sacred circle in your home. And the way that you do this is this. This is going to be a sacred circle dedicated to any issues that overwhelm you. And so, say for example, one of your issues is answering texts. Then gather your mobile phone and just place it somewhere on the floor in your lounge. It can be in your garden, in your lounge, in your bedroom, wherever you would like it to be. It can be outside in nature as well if you would like to. But just place your phone on the floor at sort of like maybe north point of the circle. If your issue is answering emails, then you place your laptop, for example, at another point in the circle. If it's like me, answering envelopes, opening letters, you place a letter in another part of the circle. And you keep going until you have placed around you in a circle anything that represents an issue that you find triggers your sense of overwhelm. And only put into the circle what feels right. Don't put so much in it that you feel overwhelmed by what you've put into the circle. If it's just one thing, your mobile phone, for example, just put that one thing in it. You can build it up day by day until eventually you can deal with everything that actually overwhelms you. But once you've created your sacred circle, whether it has several elements to it or just one, I'd like you to imagine that you are just standing at the entrance to the circle. Now, the reason I work with sacred circles is because circles are very magical shapes, but one of the reasons why I like them so much is because they're a very safe container, that when you walk into the center of a circle, you feel held by the circle. It's a safe container. So the invitation is for you, when you feel ready, to step into the center of your sacred circle. And as you step into it, you step right into the heart of it, and you just allow yourself to notice how you feel. Notice if any emotions are coming up. Remember that this circle is dedicated to helping you understand your overwhelm, to cope with your overwhelm, to receive the guidance from your overwhelm as to how to improve your relationship with it, so you can deal with the tasks that are overwhelming you. And when you feel ready, and you might want to make notes in a journal, it's very helpful to make notes of any feelings or thoughts that are coming up at this moment in time. When that feels complete, you can then move to one of the objects that you have placed around you. So say, for example, it would be me, it would be the envelope. I would pick up the envelope and I would just sit with the envelope and again notice what feelings are coming up for me and make notes of them in the journal. And you might find guidance and wisdom comes to you to support you and help you as you do this. And then, once you've done that, you can then actually ask the envelope, just actually ask the issue, and you may say something along the lines of, I find it so terrifying to open envelopes. And you might just ask the question, why do I find it so terrifying? And then listen to the answer, make notes on the answer. And then you ask the question, what is my next step forward to relieve this sense of panic, terror, anxiety and overwhelm around this issue? And then just listen quietly to your inner healer as your inner healer gives you your next step forward. Make a note of it in your journal, and then when you're ready, allow yourself to honour it. And it may take a little bit of time, but step by step, day by day, you will come to a place where you'll be able to honour the guidance of each of the issues that you have placed in your circle, because you can go through each one at a time to receive the guidance and the wisdom. So I'm going to leave that sacred circle ceremony with you as something for you to try. If you would require any more assistance with it, please email me at karenpackwood@gmail.com, or please leave comments in the comments box below. Thank you so much for watching this video and taking the time to watch this video, and I look forward to hearing from you and hearing how you're getting on. Take care and have a wonderful day.